Welcome to Act Out. I'm Eleanor Goldfield, and this is your tipping point. And this is one of the places that I grew up. We're not doing an interview this week, so I'll move around a bit to make it more interesting and give you a more panoramic view. This, by the way, is Sweden. And yep, the sun totally smiles here. For those of you who don't know, Sweden is a country in Northern Europe classified as a parliamentary democracy, aka the king doesn't do much and we have a prime minister. Now, you may know it as the socialist quagmire responsible for IKEA, ABBA, hot women, and really good chocolate. And while that is also true, Sweden is not as spotless of an example of socialist splendor as you might think. One might even argue that it's really socialist. And even if it were, would a socialist utopia be ideal for, say, the US? Or indeed any nation? Can an anything-ist utopia really exist? These philosophical questions aside, I think we first need to dive into what socialism really is. So, let's Google some shit. Socialism, social ownership of the means of production and cooperative management of the economy. Don't you just hate it when the wind blows when you turn on your microphone? And when they use the word in the definition? So let's clear that up. Social ownership can mean collective ownership such as state ownership or citizen ownership, or in more leftist cases, common ownership, where no one actually owns anything, but everyone has access to it, like a public park. Now, communism pushes for common ownership of everything, and as outlined by this guy, Karl Marx, communism is the utopian ideal, a society where a central state is no longer necessary. He didn't coin the words socialism and communism, but his outline of political and social evolution led by the working classes inspired many an uprising, like the Russian Revolution. Now, according to Marx, communism is the evolution of socialism, or as he puts it, a lower phase of communism. You have to go through socialism to get to communism, kind of like an intense rehab program for capitalists. Capitalism cannot be directly converted to communism. You need the step in between, or you'll just break yourself and your ideology and just mold into this twisted, deformed, dictatorial regime with no actual concept of an egalitarian society, which I feel like we've seen. In many ways, Sweden is a socialist nation, or more exactly, democratically socialist. Stay with me now. Your ability to fend off douchetards who call this guy a socialist depends on this segment. And also, to keep you going, here's a picture of a gorgeous Swedish model. Works every time. Now, a social democracy basically means that a strong democratic centralized state exists. Not one intending to transition to communism, but instead one existing in a sort of acceptance of capitalism, like an annoying roommate. However, in an attempt to balance the effects of capitalism, it regulates business and markets, creates unions, state-sponsored works and programs, healthcare, education, etc., to ensure that people aren't living like Americans. Now, economist Richard Wolff strips this sort of socialism of its egalitarian name and calls it state capitalism. A step up from private capitalism, which is what the US has, capitalism driven by private interests. But still, state capitalism, even under the guise of socialism, is not worthy of the name socialism. In his view, socialism doesn't currently exist, and can only exist if socialists tear themselves away from this acceptance of capitalism. The fact that the state regulates private capitalist enterprises and operates state capitalist enterprises does not reduce the capitalist structure of an economy. So long as it's exclusively the employers, whether private, state, or hybrid, whether more or less regulated, who decide how to use those profits, it is a capitalist structure. An enterprise only qualifies as socialist once a distinction between employers and employees within it has been abolished. When workers collectively and democratically produce, receive, and distribute the profits their labor generates, the enterprise becomes socialist. So, there you have it. According to absolutely no socialist ever, is this guy a socialist, and according to Wolff, neither is Sweden.